Where you are now, Dan, when you plank across this spring run of water, it's kind of springy. I was all dressed for school, and I got bouncing on that plank, and then Mother opened the door and she said, "No, stop that!" And she tried to stop me, then I went in. Full length.
He did become a good diver later on in life.
I remember quickly Mother had to find dry clothes and hustle me off. I remember just hardly leaving the house and the school bell was ringing, but it's close enough. I made it, that 5-minute warning bell.
Now, he mentioned Ewald Bleasy. That's where Ewald Bleasy lived. But notice his backyard, how sunken that is. Now, that's the original lake bed that extended across the road, because the road dipped down here, then for a block up to almost to Weston Avenue. And so all the runoff from that neighborhood would come down through here in the springtime.
And when they did raise this road enough to form a dam, and that's why the skating rink was on the far end of this, and then it would flood out here and freeze, and it was quite an extension to the skating, and that's where this Rogan went in.
Okay, so it's still a little hard for me to visualize. So the ice would extend across where the road is now?
It would go almost up that ball field up there, beyond that basketball thing. But that dip, right at the end of the schoolyard, there was a sharp bank that went down probably 5 or 6 feet down into the lowland.
But it was a natural drainage.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did it ever extend this way over the road?
Oh yeah, it went all down to the airport. It just wound its way through the fields.
Okay.
There's gully, Ross Avenue, and
okay, so that's what you were talking about before, about being able to skate all the way from here.
Yeah, we'll drive down there in a minute.
Okay.
I just want to loop by John Marshall School.
Okay, now I've got it sort of pictured in my mind a little better.
this is where all the Kirsten kids started their schooling.
Yeah, and we knew all the people lived on this street over here. I remember it must have been 1937. We stood out in front of Neitzel's house. They listened to the radio. The neighborhoods gathered to hear Max Baer and Joe Schmeling slug it out for the heavyweight championship. Remember that, Milt?
Is this the original school building?
Yeah, this is the original, the old 3-story section here.
The door-to-door was the size of the building then. These other...
That's right, yeah.
Just between the two doors. So it wasn't all that big.
Well, I'm sorry, what was between the two doors?
The building.
Yeah.
Then it was extended this way.
Oh, I see, okay. So it's the original building, but it's bigger.
Yeah. They've extended both
sides. Are those where the doors were?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. That's it.
Okay.
Then that gully, that low part, was still here, Dan. This was, you'd look down into the skating rink.
Yeah.
Okay. And the old hockey rink was right down here.
Yeah. You're right, Bill. It actually started right at this corner and slanted down. But these ball fields and all were much lower.
Mm-hmm.
And your dad used to come out here and water the ice rink at night to get the nice ice for the morning.
Elias has applied for a job this winter.
Yes.
Maintaining ice rinks.
No kidding.
Yeah.
It runs in the family.
I guess so.
It was a night job. Well, I remember some of those. There was enough force on that hose. It took a guy that knew what he was doing, but I was the guy to pull the thing around, get it in position, roll them out, roll them up. Yeah, it was cold.
Dalmadors used to live here.
Dalmador. He went early. The one boy, didn't he? He died quite young.
Yeah, they had Puffy. I don't know what his name was, but we had a lot of nicknames for the.
Everybody had one.
Yeah.
So what were your nicknames?
I don't think I really had any.
You had a nickname, Dad.
He was Dunn.
What?
You were Dunn, weren't you?
Dunn.
Dunn as in D-O-N-E or as the first syllable of first part of Dunn's?
I was just as D-U-N-A.
I was just going to say, some people said half-baked, others said Dunn. Now, Zimmerman Street, on which we are now, this is Lamont Street, I'm sorry. This was the, we ought to go down Ross Avenue for a minute, and then back over to the airport, okay?
Sure.
Good enough. There's a lot we aren't telling you, Jim.
Yeah.
Well, think of this as the first installment.
Right. right in that old house there, not this one, but one with the porch, that's where the Foxes lived.
Yeah, and in back of their house to the left here, to the next street was what did we call it? It was a woods.
The woods, yeah.
They had
It
all
was
kinds of
Fox's Woods.
Fox's Woods, cherry trees. We used to harvest cherries. That was mostly for our pockets and our mouths rather than anything else.
For money.
Now, all these houses, almost all, were built after the war. On this side of the street were some of the older ones that were there when the tornado came through.
Anklam's yet?
Yeah, but I'm going to back up. See if you can find Anklam's house. I had to go by this place several times before I discovered it.
I think it's this top box right in back of the tree. Right?
Yeah, that's the house right there. But they've so artfully concealed the original dwelling in the remodeling that it's hard to see it.
Yeah, that's changed.
Yeah, but that's the Anklam house right
The
there.
712.
They used to have a porch across the front. And she could have stand over and look at her. When you walk by here, you stick your head out the door and say, "Rubberneck!" And not for the record, Dan.
Oh, you want me to turn it off?
Came by one day, and rather than calling us Rubberneck, she had a sizable rump. She stuck that out and said, "Kiss this."
This was the mother?
That
Yeah.
was
See, times haven't changed all that much, have they?
I remember I picked up. I don't want this for the record either.
You want this off?
Or maybe it's all right. I don't know. They used to. They didn't have indoor plumbing either. So they throw it out in the backyard from the back door.
Really?
And he was a smoker.
It sounds like medieval times.
Yeah,
It was. He was a smoker, and of course he was matches for other things. I remember back there one time, spring of the year, I was picking up matchsticks. They had a rather unfamiliar smell. Mother had to inform us to leave that filthy stuff alone because it wasn't just slop water.
Oh.
Now this is Zimmerman Street. It used to just come up to Broadway and then it ended. And then they extended it down here when they laid out all this land and built all these houses after the war. But that hollow that we're talking about came about right through here and went a little bit southwest into the Wisconsin River. We're going to the airport now, and then we'll go to the insane asylum and county home when we finish at the airport.
Okay.
There were some nice strawberry patches out in this area, not far from the airport, where they used to come out of wild strawberries.
Yeah, we used to play archery golf out here.
Yeah.
And this gully we're talking about, Dan, when you got down to the river, it'd be heavy enough that there was a big wash. It was eroding, gravel sort of thing. So it was,
Tim and Billy own this house right here, 2514.
Okay. Was that there when you were kids?
They rent that out. No, it wasn't there when I was a kid. No.
Uh-huh.
No,
So I had the impression of this being all field, but were there...
That's right.
Okay.
all field.
All field there. Then the airport was here. And the original structure is right in front of us. Actually, this is a replacement in addition to the original structure. But
The original structure was...
you'll see it here. It says
Okay.
right there.
Oh,
That
okay.
building.
Okay.
And it had a hanger on the right side that would hold a couple of small outstanding pilot in that day.
Archie Toll.
Archie Toll, T-O-W-L-E. And he did one trick too many. Crashed out here and got killed. He used to fly the Waco airplanes. Come down and fascinated by they're working on the airplanes, and the Aranca, the little stubby nose single place plane. I remember he had one of those, It was fascinating. We'd come down and watch them work on the airplanes and fly the airplanes and dream about flying sometime. My first airplane flight was out of this airport in 1936. Melva, my sister, gave me a birthday present. There was a Ford trimotor that was barnstorming the country, and it was here over that period of time for a few days. And people by the droves were coming down to get their first airplane ride, 50 cents. A 10-minute ride over the city of Wausau. The old flying boxcar, man. Shake, rattle, and roll. I tell Dan about my first airplane flight out of here, the old Ford trimotor, back in 1936.
Yeah, we flew out of here in 74.
This is where we left from. We have that newspaper
Yeah.
clipping. That's from here. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, that's Archie Toll. He was the Sunfire.
Yeah, there it is right there.
He was the manager.
He's there with Amelia Earhart.
Yeah.
Yeah, she stopped there on her famous flights.
October 36. Takeoff right here. She brought the
Yeah,
tornado.
that's what Uncle Ed just. That was the same year.
Yeah. This is later in the year, October. Start setting it off.
Well, I sort of love the whole thing. I mean, I love the past, but I think that's what puts the present in perspective.
That's all very true. And I think that's lacking a lot of families today that
Yep.
don't want to know about the past, or perhaps too painful to think about it.
And we are products of our history.
Right. I think one of the things I love hearing about your childhood and history is considering the period you went through, the hardships that you had, but nevertheless the positive outlook that you've carried throughout your life despite it. So rather than bitterness and resulting depression, I mean, thinking about your dad dying, leaving the family when you were all at so young period of time where you didn't have a welfare system in place that could.
Not really.
I think that's attributed to our mother's attitude more than anything.
I was just going to say that we had a very, very unusual mother.
Now, the area we're entering now is a healthcare center now, but back in the old days, they had the big farm here.
Big barns, horses.
Big barn, horses, cows. There's only one building left from the original complex, and I'm going to drive back there.
Do you know to what extent having the farm associated with the asylum was primarily an economic thing, or was it part of rehabilitation, or?
I don't know.
I
My own.
Well, back
or
in
I guess it would be treatment, not rehabilitation.
Yeah, treatment is the word. Of course, back in those days, what do you do with a person who was called insane?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, a lot of that was probably deep depression that could have been treated in some way, but they warehoused a lot of these people. And then in the what we call the county home or the poor farm, indeed they were poor people who had no means of livelihood, and so there was a place for them here. And that's the building right straight ahead there. That's the original county home. I'll drive around to the front of it. It's been modernized, completely remodeled on the inside. I've been in there, and of course state-of-the-art windows and air conditioning and all the rest of it. Now it's a drug rehab center and alcoholic treatment and all that kind of thing, and psychiatric. I walked up here one day, just a couple of months ago, and I just walked all around the grounds, and I looked in the back door, which this used to be the front of the building here, where the superintendent had his office. Anyhow, I was standing up looking at the door, so to go around the other side for the entrance. But I was staring through, and a man came walking down the hall, a distinguished-looking gentleman, and he came right to the door and opened it up and said, "What do you want?" So I said, "Well, I'm here. I'm living in the past. My parents met here back in 1920, and I just moved here. Thought I'm going to walk around, review my history a little bit." He said, "Come on in." The man's name is George Million, as in money. And he gave me a tour around there. He told the only original part is still the flooring. It's the old octagon tile floor.
So you called this the poorhouse then?
Yep, poor farm.
Yeah, we used to, our youth group used to come up here and sing and give out literature.
There's the the basement area down there, they had a little auditorium. They showed movies on Friday nights. And once in a while, Monday nights, I believe it was. Friday nights we'd go down to the Marshall School, but I think it was Monday nights they'd show movies down there, and we'd sneak in there once in a while to see the movie.
Remember the plump, oversized bluegills you used to catch?
Yeah, right. Well fed on
until mother
on nutrients that came from the waste system. Now, where this building with a pyramid roof is, the boiler plant used to be in there. I think there still is the power plant in there. But a man by the name of George Paulus was the fireman or engineer or whatever. And there was a tunnel between this building and the boiler plant and the original buildings, which looked like this one, on the other side. And we used to go down there and see Swan Nelson. At that time, Nelson was the superintendent of the place, and his son was a friend of Clyde's particularly. But he'd take us down into the boiler plant and then through the tunnel. It's the most spooky thing you'd ever want to see. It had the steam lines running through it. But I remember rushing through there when I get out of that tunnel. Frightening. Had a little dim light bulb here and there, and hot, noisy, pipes and all that. And then the asylum was on the other side.
So it was all steam heated.
Yeah.
Is the asylum building still there?
The what?
The asylum building.
Yeah.
The original building is still there.
No, yeah, the poor farm. No,
The asylum's gone.
the
Okay.
asylum, but it
That was a large brick building.
Yeah.
About three, floors, wasn't it?
it what?
About 3 stories.
It was 3 stories high, and it had screen porch. The inmates used to be out there. Sometimes you hear them yelling and screaming. And no psychotropic drugs to control them in those days. Now, right down on the other side of the airport runway was the Milkers, where they had a little barn and really a boathouse. They tied the boat to the dock and kept the oars in the barn, or just a little metal shed. But that's where they'd row across the river every day during the summertime.
And we used to, there used to be a dirt road going down to it,
Yeah.
which we used to use to do our fishing. We used to fish off the end of those large dock boats that they used for transporting their milk.
Yeah.
Is that Mosney Hill in the back there?
Yes.
Did you get that airplane going up?
Yeah.
Well, we got about 20 minutes before I have to pick up the students. Then we'll go back for lunch, and then we'll continue after lunch. If that's okay by you.
Sure.
Sure.
Or subject.
That's great. Can I take you out for lunch?
I think Betty would be disappointed that she wouldn't get to eat her chili.